Is it really possible to live a life of joy as a military spouse? If so, how do we do it? And does it look the same for every person? Those are the questions we are diving into this week on the show. I'm talking with the Joy Weaver, AJ Smit. She absolutely understands where you are at because she is also a military spouse. And in this conversation, we talk about what it means to live an embodied life, to tap into joy, and the importance of regulating our nervous system. Plus, you'll get to listen in as she coaches me through her process of helping me tap into embodied joy in my life. If you have been struggling with the way that your life looks or wanting to walk in more joy in your current season, you will not want to miss this episode. You, my friend, were made for more. More than the managing of schedules, keeping up with kiddos, and holding down the home front. Welcome to the MilSpouse Mastermind Show, the podcast that empowers you to get unstuck and craft a life with more meaning and less overwhelm. I'm your host, Christine, seasoned military spouse, mom of 3, and your guide to designing a life you love and growing a purpose-fueled business as a military spouse. I believe you have something valuable to offer, and when you pursue the things that light your heart on fire, you trade frustration for fulfillment and isolation for a life of impact. It's time to discover who you are meant to be, because together we can change the world. All right, friends, welcome back to the show. My guest today is AJ Smit, who is a military spouse, an author, a guide, and a henna extraordinaire. With her online home, TheJoyWeaver, AJ's mission is to help you weave clarity, joy, and ease into your life and business, which is something that we are all about here on the podcast. I met AJ a few months back when we were both going through the same coaching certification boot camp. And one of the things that really struck me about AJ was just her energy and her gift for speaking life and encouraging others. And I am so excited that that is what you are going to get to experience today on the show. So AJ, first of all, welcome to the show. I am so happy to have you here. And I'd love for you just to introduce yourself and share a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, first off, thank you for having me. And B, that was such a lovely intro. I feel like now I should just save that on my phone and people are like, who are you? And I'll just be like, Christine will tell you. That was, I love your enthusiasm. 10 gold stars. I'm AJ, she, her. I currently live in Korea. And just for the last 15 years or so, I've been in different ways helping people discover more about joy and what it feels like to be embodied and for myself too, right? This has been a personal journey. So now it's turned into red tents and so many more things as things kind of snowball as business does, right? One thing turns into another. So I'm excited to dive in and all the ways this can take. Yeah.
Yes, I am so excited to really talk about what it means to embody joy. But before we get there, I would love for you just to share a little bit about your military spouse story. What was it like coming into this lifestyle? Was it what you expected? Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah. So I've been married for 14 and a half years. And then Jer's my husband. He's been in the military for 12 years next month. And so we actually went to college and met and married in college. And then we graduated in 2012 during the part 2 crash, right? And I had a nonprofit major and I was working after school programs and stuff. But Jer was business and history. And so he's like, jobs are a little weird. And his older brother was in the Air Force. And so he's like, hey, when we got married, we said we wanted to be adventure partners, travel the world and be adventurous. So he's like, the Air Force would be a good way to do that and have consistent income right now when everything's so up in the air. So he enlisted because how sometimes it's like the officers like maybe, and we were like, we need a sure thing. And so our first base was Hawaii, which was amazing. Ended up working really great because I found out you could be a professional mermaid as we were getting ready to go to Hawaii. And I was like, oh my gosh. So that was amazing. And then we went to Germany, Mississippi, and then he became an officer in San Antonio, and then had a little bit of training in Florida. And now we're here in Korea. So we've been able to lead our best lives with the Air Force. I always call her the first wife, like, because she gets first dibs on stuff. Like, sometimes she's
Yep.
not great for everybody, but
Yep.
it's been really great for us.
Well, that's so funny because when we were stationed in Guam and we'd gone down to the beach and there was somebody dressed as a mermaid, getting their pictures on the beach. And my girls were so excited. They're like, Mommy, a real mermaid. Like, it just totally made their day.
Yeah. That actually might have been my friend, Angela, but because she was stationed in Guam and she has a mermaid tail. But I love that so much. Like, those moments, that's why, like, so much of our world is so, like, what's right, what's wrong, like, what's real, like, here, like, you gotta go. Like, it's so intensely focused that, like, the ability for play and wonder often gets, like, filtered out. And so those moments of, like, mermaids exist, what else is possible? Or, like, I didn't like that. It's like this heart opening, like, oh, possibilities of, like, what more inner world is here. And so I just love that story. Thank you for sharing that with me. Like, I've been on the receiving end of that as the mermaid, but I always love hearing it from the mom perspective because, yeah.
Well, and that's one of the greatest blessings in my life to having kids is just trying to see the world through their eyes and having that imagination, having that possibility, having that feeling that it's okay to like have fun and play. I need more of that in my life. And my kids are really good about reminding me of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. Kids are really great. My life has gotten so much better since I was like kind of taking the idea of treating myself like a toddler, which sounds a little pedantic, but when I'm hungry, I have a snack. When I'm really tired, I'm just going to go to bed now. And things get easier when you actually listen to your body signals, kind of like and you're just like, I'm super overwhelmed. Let me go sit outside. Let me go play for a minute. Let me just shake it out and then come back. And so kids are fabulous.
It makes things so much better when we can just take that time to be in our bodies, to ground ourselves outside. All those little things make such a huge difference. So, talk to us about where you got your interest in understanding and how we embody joy. What was that like for you in your journey?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, sometimes you look back and it's like all these seeds that were planted. So this might be TMI, but also there's probably a lot of women listening to this and we're not having these conversations. My birth control tried to kill me a couple times. And also I guess TMI for sterilization and stuff and things of that nature. But for people who don't want to keep listening. But so when I was 27, I was like, I can't do this anymore. And so I tried to get a hysterectomy. And the doctors were like, no, you're too young. And so then I was like, okay, I got to figure this out because it was just my hormones were all over the place. I was feeling off. And I came across this book called Moontime by Lucy Pierce. And it talked about the flow and ebb of our cycles and how it comes into 4 different parts. And I was like, what? Why didn't anybody tell me this? And I didn't know that, at some parts in the month, depending on how long your cycle is, like sometimes you have more energy or less energy. And I was been so frustrated by myself because every couple months I would crash or I would be exhausted or I'd be like, so just like, I always have like one day on my cycle that like day 17 through 19 that I'm just like, you're just kind of like ready to shiv people with cord cup holders in the kneecap. Not hard, but just like, don't touch me, don't talk to me. And like, I just thought it was me. I just thought I was, but like learning that information was like, oh, and it was like, I had so much more awareness of how my energy fluctuates and changes and what my body's trying to tell me. And it like connected this conversation with me and my body. And then I started talking to other people and they were like, oh, me too. Like we had all these conversations and then we started retense. And then it was like, what else don't we know? And then also like, if this has been hidden from me of information, what else is there that is kind of more limited of how do we live embodied lives? What does it mean to be a fully embodied woman? How do I use vulnerability? Or, like women have that intuition and sometimes it gets twisted like spider woman manipulative, but like that's also our intuition to connect and share and hold space and put the pieces together. And so it's just, yeah, I could talk about that all day, but that's kind of how that started and how it's rolled to learning and growing and tools that we can use in our life to show it more fully, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I remember the first time I was driving in the car and listening to a podcast, and they were talking about the cycle and how we have different levels of energy and productivity. And I was like, what in the world? I'm like, it makes so much sense. And
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
never heard anything like that before. And it was just mind blowing. And then I started like looking at my life in terms of a month. And I was like, this makes so much sense. It is so eye opening. So, what was that step, that next step for you when you're like, how can I learn more? What did you do?
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that Lucy talked about in her book was a red tent. And it's a space where women come together to share their stories of womanhood, maybe their periods, bleeding, rape, abortion, miscarriage, birth, sex, the whole nine, everything that we don't talk about. It's a space for that, for women to just come be, oh, not have to perform, not have to be on. And I was like, yes, I need this. And so the next step was building a community based around this idea of just, are you tired? Because I'm tired too. And like, I can't, there's got to be something more than this, right? Like, how often are we just like, I feel like something's missing. Like, this can't be it. And like, by the time I left Germany, we had over 53 women come through tent. We had like a couple of retreats, but it was just like, man, getting other people together that were like, yeah, me too. And also, where do we go from here? Just like fed the engine of like, how do I want to grow? What does that look like? And then I'm a research little bulldog and I'm like, oh, I'm interested in this or I'm struggling with this. Turns out I also have ADHD. So I was like, everybody's struggling as much as I am. And so it's all these tools to help me. And so I shared them with everybody else and they do help everybody else. But now that I know that, I just kind of laugh because so much is, how do we ask for what we need? How do we set boundaries without feeling like we're terrible people? How do we not, but then that's kind of evolved to like one-on-one work and things like that. But having that, doing this exploration with other people in sacred space, that was kind of the next evolution of it. Yeah. And the book, I guess. Yeah.
I love it because that has been my own experience of wanting to
Mm,
learn more. How do I do this well? How do I thrive as a military spouse? And then, okay, I'm going to make a
uh,
podcast and we're going to talk about all of these things that I'm researching. And like, I'm going to share
yes.
what I'm learning because if I need it, I know that I'm not the only one that needs this information.
Yeah.
And so, like,
Yeah.
if we come together in all of these different ways, we are so much better together. And I love that. Now, you wrote a book called The Red Thread Weaving an Embodied Life of Joy. What led you to write this book?
Also, just yes to you researching and starting your podcast because you're like, if I need this, somebody else does.
Yep.
Like, yes, yes, yes. That's the whole idea of passing it on and bringing people along, which is also why I wrote my book. Is because people were leaving our red tent, and they're like, "There's no red tents near me," which was the same thing that happened to me when I found out about it. I was like, "Oh, I gotta go," and the nearest one was 2.5 hours away and in Germany. I was like, I speak enough German to go to the grocery store, but not to participate. It's for a tent, They're like, how do I lead a tent or how do I start a tent? And so I was like, well, I knew these things. I could put it in a book, and then it became so much more because I was like, oh, it'll just have the scripts. But then it was like, because the way I do tents and everybody is different is they have different topics like vulnerability or boundaries or curiosity. And we dive in, like we have activities on how to integrate like our boundaries tent has you verbally saying no when somebody's like, can I have a hug? No, but I can give you a fist. Like we're practicing, we're learning, we're journaling, we're doing meditations, we're sharing. And so in the book, turn into so much more than just like, hey, if you need help starting a book, it's like, or a tent, here's, asking the bigger question, what does an embodied life of joy look like for you? And here's themes and lenses to look through and ways to integrate it into your body with activities, stories from my life, stories from red tent ladies' lives. And it like goes kind of hard. I have no chill. And so I'm rereading my book right now because we're doing this year-long book club in my group. And it's like, it goes to town and asks you questions, like real questions. So yeah.
So what was the process of writing that book like? Did it all just kind of flow out or was it something that it took you a while to get it all out?
Yeah. Man, I wish somebody would have told me that writing a book is a little bit like writing like a Horcrux. I don't know if you know Harry Potter,
Yep.
but like it's just like this piece of your soul. There are things I'm so glad I did the way I did. So I wrote, do you know The Artist Way by Julia Cameron?
I've heard of it.
Okay. So that book was just, it's like a 12-week journey to cultivate your creative soul. But it was like, just do the thing. Like, why not? Like, yes, things have been written, but it hasn't been written by you. And I was like, okay. And then Rachel Hollis had this thing back then that was like just an hour a day towards your goal. And I was like, that feels like too much, but I could do 30 minutes. So over the course of 6 months, 30 minutes in the morning, Monday through Friday, I just like wrote my book and then the timer was up and I was like, okay, cool. And I just like word vomited all these different stories. And then once I hit 60,000 words, I was like, I read a book, I did the thing. And I went to Avis Max and got it bound and everything. And I was like, it's terrible. It's a stormy first draft, as Brene Brown would say. And then I went back and, started on my book proposal, and like big shout out to like Megan Brown, because she kind of helped with all of that stuff too. And then started pitching to places and then rewriting beta readers and things like that. And also, like, if anybody is interested, listening, you or listeners that have questions about writing a book, like, please message me or email me. Like, I'm open, and there are things I wish I would have known. Starting that, like, there's so much unknown that's kind of kept behind wraps that shouldn't be.
Mm.
And like, it was hard for me at times too, because it was also COVID and I burned out really badly writing the book. It was worth it. But there are some things that could have been avoided, if that makes sense. So it was an adventure.
Okay, so let's talk about what it really means to live an embodied life. Kind of unpack that
Yeah.
idea for us.
Yeah. It means asking, what does that look like for you? Because I think some people want like a list. I run naturally high, whether that's because God sneezed while making me with an extra dose of joy, or because of the ADHD, or because I'm just excited about life.
I love
It
it.
doesn't really matter, right? But some people are like, oh, I'm not like you. I don't get that. It's like, well, joy doesn't look like a lot of things. Joy looks like, here, let's try something. Okay, close your eyes. Think of a time that you felt, yes, this is right. Like maybe it was by the beach, or like in the mountains, or you were on a hike, or it was at a birthday party and like a kid was just like lit up like a Christmas tree and so excited. Or maybe you were like looking at your lover and just being like, oh, this is good. Like that like sacred moment of alignedness. You got one?
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it?
There is a beach and a jungle in Guam, and it's very, very remote. But like you walk into the jungle and the leaves on the trees are like massive. And it's like you're just so connected to nature and creation. And it is like one of the most life-giving places that I've
I love that. Can I answer you a couple questions?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So in your mind's eye, when you see that place, when you feel like you can hear like the waves going and like the wind rustling through the trees, if you tune into your body, what does that feel like in your body? Are there any colors that come up, or textures, or like light?
I mean, I think I see the green a lot because of the leaves.
Mm.
But it's very peaceful and calming.
Yeah. Yeah. Where do you feel that peaceful and calm in your body?
In my chest.
What does that feel like in your chest?
I guess it kind of feels like a empty ball, if you will. It feels like that there's not that sense of like striving and worry there.
Yeah. Yeah. That feeling, that's embodiment when you're like, yes, this is right. And so an embodied life of joy is tuning in to where that feeling of centered alignment of like, yes, this is right, takes us next. And sometimes things are hard, right? Like we're in the middle of a hard decision. Like, do we do this or that? But we can be like, okay, but I got and all this stuff. And we can make it all from up here, right? Of like, okay, and I don't know if you know parts work, Richard C. Schwartz and all that stuff. Like, whoa, we can have some parts chitter chattering, and like managers are like, we got to do this because like XYZ protectors like, we can't do this because like that would cost so much money, and then like, whoa, but shiny. But when we
Yes.
sync to this, like, yeah. And as military spouses, like we got to make these choices. Like Jared and I are in real time talking about a potential house that might have me moving beforehand to move into, because it's a dream house, but it's like,
Yep.
ooh. And when you have your pros cons list, like that's great and all. But when you get quiet, when you sink into that memory of like expansiveness of space, of that peace and calm, what would the next steps from that place look like? And so the idea is like stepping into more and more of that. Yes, this is the right next thing, and pausing. And like from there, you'll have more moments, more flourishing, more connection. Doesn't mean things won't be hard, but it means we come back to center versus like spinning out and then looking for those moments and like reveling in them and pausing, like, oh, thank you. Thank you, God. Thank you, universe. Like, thank you, me, for showing up in the thing and being present, like whatever that looks like, to integrate more of this, that this is what life gets to be like. We get to be present, witness these. Yeah.
It's good. It's good. I think for some of us, we like that to-do list. We like, okay, if I
Mm,
just do this formula, this X, Y, and Z, then I get the answer that I'm after. And what you're talking
yeah.
about, you can't just put in a formula because the outcome's going to be different for each of us because we are each created uniquely and we have a different way of showing up in the world. And that's what I love about connecting with people and especially connecting with everyone that I have met through this podcast is really just the sense to see how everybody is showing up as their unique self, doing the
Mm,
thing that is on their
mm,
heart, but how it's making us a kaleidoscope of human beings that have all of these different colors, that have these different gifts and talents. And when we come together, that is amazing to see all of those gifts, those skills, those abilities, how we show up in the world. And when we are supporting each other, it's amazing to see what's possible.
yeah. I just want to, I'm just double saving that first off. And I also want to reflect back to you how much you are lighting up. Like hearing you say that, I feel peace and calm. Like you are in real time, like living into alignment. It's, yeah, like you can tell. I love this so much. I'm also curious, like, how does decision making show up for you in this? And like, how does the idea of like tuning into the centered place and feeling into that and like giving that some extra weight? Yeah. How does that show up for you or feel for you?
For me, I am one of these people that has so much going on in my head, and it's easy to get lost there. And
Yeah.
the best thing that I can do for myself is to carve out time each day just to be quiet, to listen
Yeah.
to what is really going on inside of me and to be able to start to say, okay, like, but what is the core issue here? What do I need in this moment? And journaling does so much for me.
Oh my goodness. Yes, yes, yes. Yes to the quiet time and also to journaling. In the artist way, she talks about morning pages, which is 3 pages of just brain dumping on paper. And now I'm like a 2 pager kind of person, but journaling really is, because some people think it has to be like fancy, like, dear diary, today we went to the
Yep.
beach and I met Gregory, but I'm just like, I gotta go to the dentist, gotta do this thing, like, but that. And also, how dare she? But like, when you have a place that you can just completely, because our brains are little hoarders and they're like, oh, don't forget, but when it's on paper, thoughts stop moving and also our brain like, okay, you got that down. I can kind of let that go now. So yes to journaling because I will always, always be an advocate for that.
Yeah. I did an episode um probably last fall, and I'll link that in the show notes. But I talked
Yeah.
about my summer last summer when I decided I was going to try something different. And instead of getting up early and having my morning routine where I take the time to read my affirmations and to reflect
Mm,
and to do mindfulness, I was like, I'm gonna get up early and I'm gonna do like a power hour before everybody else is up in the house and see how much I can get
yeah.
done in the morning. And my mental health tanked. And I was like, I
Really?
have to have that time for myself in the morning if I'm going to be able to show up in the rest of my life. That's what I noticed. It was so important for me to have that quiet time to quiet my mind in the morning before my day begins.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's such good awareness too. And that you shifted, right? Because sometimes we're going so fast that we don't see the warning bells, or like the canary has stopped singing. And we're like, it's fine. I'll sing by myself. But like at some point, your body starts screaming, like when I was burning out, I was like, yeah, I'm just tired. I'm exhausted. It's fine. Like everything's, but then like as it kept going, and then after the book came out, my body crashed. My body like, I didn't know it was possible for a body to pull a hard stop. She pulled a hard stop. And so I think being able to listen on like, what are the things that are dropping my energy? And it might not seem like much, but it's 5% here, 10% there. And like, before we know it, we're like way lower than we expected. And we're like, oh, hey, like, how did I get here? And looking back. So those little shifts, man, they count for so much.
And that's where I think the importance of taking that time to reflect and assess,
Yeah.
how am I doing? Because if I never take that
Yeah.
time to say, hey, how am I doing? Then I'm not going to notice that, hey, my energy is not what it used to be, that I'm not showing up in the
Yeah.
way that I want to show up. And then I crash that much harder. And the
Yeah.
longer that I've been putting these practices into action, the more that I take the time to regularly reflect and assess how I'm doing, the more quicker that I can notice that, hey, something's off. I need to shift this about my life to get back to where I need to be.
100%. 100%. It's like checking the pool chlorine, so you can like add a little or shift a little. Like, yes, yes, yes. Exactly. Just yes.
What does embodied joy look like in your life?
It looks like so many dance breaks. I used to think, I know this sounds crazy from TheJoyWeaver, which is what I call my business that I run and call myself. But like, I used to think that I had to show up just to give other people joy or just to make other people happy. And that like me getting joy was from that and for that. But now I'm kind of realizing like this looks like so many other things as well. And so this looks like a lot of like forest time, like just sitting in the forest. We have a forest near our house, or just walking through. Like the forest knows, the trees know, right? I had a mentor say to me, and because I was down through a rough time, and when it floods in the forest, the trees are like, I hate this flood. How dare it? They're like, oh, look at these extra nutrients coming through. And she's like, what if you're being flooded right now, but these are extra nutrients? And I was like, I hate this so much, but also this is a good point. And so I've been like leaning into like forest type goodness, dance breaks. I love line dancing as well. And then like rituals with my friends around like bonfires and just like cozy nights, like red tents just filling my soul lately. Working out, also journaling, giving back in some different ways that I do. And also like dressing. Like I get so much joy out of dressing in layers. I kind of look like a Ren Fair Bard witch is my style vibe. But like when I put on clothes that feel like me and I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh, here she is. Like, yeah, if I just put it on switch and like, okay, here we go. But, like, okay, we'll do the day. But wearing clothes that bring me joy and make me feel like me on the inside has brought so much joy and helps me show up in the way that I desire to as well. So it's a lot of like physical, tangible things because that's how I take it in. But it looks different for every person as well. What about you?
I mean, I think for me personally, like the times that I can get out in nature, that
Mm.
does so much for me. And it is something that I am constantly having to work on because my schedule gets filled pretty quickly. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh no, I just need to like take today and get stuff knocked out of the way. And last week I had to force myself to stop overthinking it. You just need to go book the paddleboard and get on the river and do the paddleboarding. And I had to basically shut my brain off and just do it because
Yeah.
otherwise I would have talked myself out of it. But I need that time away so that I can continue to show up. And so that's something that I am like continually working on in my own life.
Yeah. Can I share a tool that I found too, similar to this, that's
Yes.
like been ridiculously helpful? Yeah, because when we get going and I'll get into the state and I'll be like, I gotta go. And even last night, I realized I worked an hour and a half and I was like, should take a break. Like my timer had gone off and I was like, oh, but I'm almost done. But like, so I call it like the Halto cheat sheet, like hungry, angry, lonely, tired, overwhelmed. Because usually if we're like feeling itchy or feisty or like we're reaching for coping mechanisms that don't feel supported, because we're feeling like 3 out of 5 of those. But sometimes we're like, I don't have time. I have such a full day, but we can usually do something. So I make this like table, full toe across the top, and then like 0 to 5 minutes, 5 minutes to 15 minutes, 15 to like 30, 30 to an hour, and then like hour plus. And then I go across and fill in like, okay, hey, if I'm hungry and I only have 5 minutes, I can have a granola bar, I can drink a glass of water. I can like maybe have a piece of toast. If I've got 30 minutes, I can make a whole meal. If I got 10, I can microwave something, do I need a nap? Delegation, like there's different things, but like in the overall category, because sometimes, yeah, going in the forest will totally reset me going to the gym. But sometimes I only have 5 minutes and I'm just like, I'm going to do nothing, but I'm going to just sit my butt on the grass outside 3 minutes, and even in the cold answer, I was like, maybe just 2 minutes, but I was like, okay, fresh air, okay, shake it out. But just even those 2 minutes of, hey, okay, okay, and going back in could just do so much for our mindset. And if you only have 5 minutes, I'm telling you, as silly as it sounds, putting on a song that feels ridiculous, but you kind of want to dance to, like 90s dance jams or something, like some Christina Aguilera, whatever, helps so much too, because movement changes our endorphins and our serotonin. Like biohacking is a whole thing from a super intense standpoint, but also from sometimes we just need a quick dose.
When you are working with someone to help them tap into joy, where do you recommend they begin?
Great question. Usually when people come to me, the first thing I ask them is to tune in. And like, if they do, and so many people, and this isn't a judgment, if you're listening, you're like, I have no idea what you mean by tuning in. When I say tuning in, and I also get asked this question a lot. This is accessible for any faith. This isn't like just for woo people or just for, atheists or just for Christians. Like anybody can tap in. And so it's that voice, kind of like you and I did earlier, where it's like, hey, that peaceful moment. But there's a voice inside of us that's like deep and low. I call it the deep river voice, or spirit. And it's like down here. And it's quiet and it's kind. And even if you're in the middle of like everything falling apart, it's like, yeah, here's the next right thing. It's going to be okay. We're going to get through this, because we have other parts sometimes that get really loud, like angry inside voices or loud voices or, fear and shame or like fast, quick. And like, we got to do this because that's just our expectations of what we think other people expect from us, and then we got like the quiet voice, but it's like kind of sneaky. And it's like, yeah, you do suck. You are a terrible human. Like, if people are like, oh, this is me. And it's like, oh my gosh, no, that's Barbara. Create some space, babe. Create some space. And like, that's our inner critic. But there's just these different things that sometimes we think these other voices are inside things. And so my first invitation, put your hands in your chest and your stomach and tap in and tune in. I have meditations on my YouTube too that are free that can help with this. But allowing yourself to sink and get quiet, like you talked about earlier too, and say, what is here? What is present? And that, and sometimes that's a lot to ask as well. And I totally acknowledge that as well, that sometimes asking that question is the scariest thing you can ask. And there have been times I've avoided asking because I'm like, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Everything's fine. Everything's good. It's fine. It's good. We're fine. We're sorry. We all break, but that's where you start, is you start asking the question. And sometimes you can do that by yourself and sometimes you need help and that's okay too. But that's what I'm here to help people do, is hold space for them to tap in and know that they're held, because sometimes the fear is so big that we're like, I'm going to die. If I ask, I'm totally going to die. And we're like, our odds of dying are actually very low, and I've been repeating that to myself lately for some things of like, my odds of dying are pretty low by posting this. I'm going to post this because this feels in alignment. We probably will not die. And I haven't died yet. So I'm like, okay, like that nervous system regulation. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's been amazing in my own journey and in those that I have walked with, just to understand more fully about how ourselves and our bodies are connected And when
Oh my
we
gosh, yeah.
want to be able to deal with anything going on around us, we've got to start by taking some deep breaths and tuning into what's
Mm.
going on in our nervous system, in our body. Calming ourselves down allows us that space to be able to reflect on, now what could I do? Versus feeling like I'm attached to what's going on in the moment.
Yeah, yeah. The like spot on two things you said that I just want to like reflect because yes, yes, yes. The calming ourselves down enough to be able to ask the question. Because when we're asking the question, we're and then I got it like, oh, we are just gonna get like Firehouse Sally. That's like 5 alarm bells. And then you said something else. What can I do next? The like, because it's just unfortunate. Sometimes we're like, it shouldn't be like this, and it shouldn't, and they should have done, and they should like, well, yep, yep, yep. And also, that's just like not the reality. I am so sorry. Like that sucks so much. Agreed. And if reality is what it is, if this, if they're not going to change, we can't change other people, which has been a struggle. Man, sometimes you're like, if they would just, everything else would be great.
If they would just, if the military would just, any of these things.
Yeah. So, Christine, that was spot on. Yeah.
Is there anything, a message that you want to give military spouses that are listening to this and they really want more joy in their lives? What would you want to say to them?
Now I'm going to tap in. I say that even if you don't believe it yet, you are worthy of goodness and joy and delight and like goodness. I know I said goodness twice, but so often from a feminine standpoint and also military spouse standpoint, just the way our lives go, we think I just get the crumbs. I'll make it work, whatever it is. And like you're allowed to want more. And also that's also your work to do. Like sometimes it sucks that building an embodied life of joy takes work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay that it's not coming naturally because it's a skill that you have to cultivate it. And there's no shame in that. You just haven't learned this yet because nobody's teaching you. This isn't, so just there's no shame here. But I really invite you to get out your journal, like Christine mentioned, chill, like allow yourself some space, like she mentioned, and like tap in, or like if you're like, I can't be calm, tap into the memory like I showed earlier and ask. And if you want help, like Christine is absolutely amazing and astounding. And like, yes, we were in the coaching program, like fit together and she can hold exquisite space. I've got you too. Like there are so many different people that are here for you to walk alongside you and encourage you in this, but like you're worthy of having this. You don't get excluded. There's no like, everybody gets an embodied life except for you, Sally, except for you. Like that's not how that works.
That's so good. Yes. And I just want to say yes to everything that you said. Let everybody know how they can connect with you, how they can learn about your offerings and about Red Tent, all the things.
Yeah. So you can go to TheJoyWeaver.com. I'm also TheJoyWeaver on all the places, TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. I have a free Facebook group called Embodied Life of Joy. And then my book, Red Thread, Weaving and Embodied Joy, is on Amazon, all these things. And we're switching to our print shop. And so this year I get to record my audiobook for it.
Ooh,
So
that's exciting.
Yeah. So lots of goodness. But yeah.
Yeah, no, that's
Always.
awesome because I am an avid audiobook listener. So anytime I can have an audiobook on when I'm driving in the car, when I'm doing laundry, all the things, it is
Same.
so life-giving. So I'm so excited for that for you. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing with our community today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you and all that you do. Your joy is palpable. It is lovely.
Okay, friend, I hope you love this conversation as much as I did. And specifically, I hope you take to heart what AJ said. You are allowed to want more, to not just settle for crumbs. And also, it's up to you to do the work. There are challenges to life as a military spouse, but honestly, there are challenges to life as a human. And also, we can still live an embodied life of joy. Yes, it takes work, but it is possible. And sometimes you need someone to help you tap into joy because you feel like you can't get out of your own way, out of your head, or out of whatever circumstance feels overwhelming in your life. But honestly, the only way to stay stuck is to do nothing. So book a call with AJ, book a call with me. That's why the Work With Me link is in the show notes, because I want to see you get unstuck and craft a life with purpose. And I would love to help you get the clarity you need so you can live filled, fueled, and full of joy. Hey friend, before you go, the MilSpouse Mastermind community is here to help you thrive as a military spouse. Figure out what lights your heart on fire and equip you to create a life of impact. You can have an incredible impact simply by heading over to iTunes to subscribe and leave a review. And if today's episode was meaningful to you, I know it will be for others too. Spread the word by taking a screenshot of this episode and share it to your stories so we can continue to reach more people, change more lives, and shift the way that military spouses look at life. Because we are better together, and together we can change the world. Let's do it.